Do you know, Pascal, when I look at really successful films, my heart often sinks when I hear of somebody thinking about remaking it. You know, a really classic film, something like Back to the Future, my heart would sink if somebody said, we're going to remake Back to the Future. And yet, sometimes they do come along and remake an old film, and they do it in such a unique and interesting and new way that it totally blows the original out of the water and really makes you sit up and think, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And The Invisible Man 2020, starring Elisabeth Moss, to my mind, is one of those films which I would have said, oh, for goodness sake, don't make another version of The Invisible Man. But they made it, and it's so different to the original, and yet it still pays homage to the original that I was literally blown away by it. And actually, my wife and I watched it again last night, Pascal, for the third time.
Wow, well, we watched it twice with my wife Denise, but I would agree with you. I mean, if you think about it, I've not read the book, but I'm aware of the H.G. Wells book. I saw a long time ago the 1933 movie. I'm going to say David Rains starring,
Yes.
but I could be wrong. Then I saw the TV series with David McCallum. I saw different versions. I even saw the comedy with Chevy Chase, Memoirs of the Invisible Man. To my, super all right. Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon. So, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, it's actually quite impressive. And others that I've never seen in TV series from different nations and different languages. So this is a story that it could come across as a bit tired with who has not seen or by the Invisible Man. But the difference here is that the storyline is different. It's not necessarily focused on the Invisible Man and his downfall from just playing pranks to all the way to becoming a murderer that's captured so well. And what I will say is there's some real shocking moments, some real jumpy moments in this film as well.
Yeah, and as I said, we've watched it 3 times, and some of the jump scares have got us all 3 times, even though we knew they were coming. And, it's a combination, isn't it? It's a science fiction film, it's a horror film, and it's nerve-shredding suspense sometimes. I mean, poor old Elisabeth Moss, she tends to play women in films who just have a really hard time. Pretty much in every film she's in, she's being beaten up or terrorized by somebody. But, this lady goes through so much in this film. Great actress, but some of the suspense sequences are absolutely edge-of-seat stuff. And the thing is, Pascal, because it's called The Invisible Man, and sometimes she's in a room on her own, and even just the name of the film, is there an invisible man in this room with her? Now, I'm sure that early on in the film there isn't, but they make it so well, the angle of the shot, the audio in the shot, the lighting of the shot. You start searching, don't you, for there's got to be somebody in this room. And he's invisible, so you're never going to be able to see him anyway. But you're looking. It just plays with your mind so much. And then, of course, eventually, yes, something happens in the background. There is somebody there, and it's just absolutely incredible the way they keep that nail-biting suspense going.
I think you've got to obviously congratulate the director who also wrote the film, who has paid his dues with his friend James Wan. Now, James Wan would be known to many for the Saw franchise, Insidious, and many others. And obviously, the director, I'm looking at my notes quickly, Lee Waltnell, did Upgrade, which is a great movie, action movie, and you can see some of the style of the movement of the camera in Upgrade a lot more, and of course the Invisible Man. But you're right, and in the old movies, it was more the story of the Invisible Man, and the way in which, day after day and week after week, he would start to literally lose his mind. And here we've got the character played by Elisabeth Moss, who essentially is not believed by anybody. She's not believed by her friends, the authorities, think that she's essentially recovering from the fact that she was in an abusive relationship, and so on and so forth, and therefore she's not believed. You yourself, kind of to your point, Roger, think, well, maybe she's wrong too. Maybe there isn't anyone until you get the first clue. For me, the moment the movie starts to become like really chilling is when she sat in that room. And I've got to be careful because this is a new movie. People perhaps have not seen it yet, but she sat in that room and she's staring in the chair. Her friend says to her, "Are you okay?" or words to that effect. And she says very, very calmly, but very, very distressed, she says, "I think there is someone sat on that chair." And the camera points to the chair where there's nobody, but maybe there is. And that's when the movie takes, a very, very interesting turn.
Yeah, and as I say, and you're absolutely right, we shouldn't give too much away because, people may not have seen this. It's literally only just come out on Blu-ray and DVD, so please do go and see it if you haven't, and then come back and listen to this part of the show again. But yeah, it is such an original take on an old classic that, I think that they really do need to get the plaudits for this, because it could just have been, they could have dusted off the old, the guy wrapped with bandages, the glasses, the top hat, the long black coat. They didn't do any of that. They completely reinvented it. And it's actually a decent story as well. It's an abusive relationship story, but they've woven in this whole science fiction trope and this whole horror vibe as well. I think it's I've seen it 3 times. Could go and watch it again now because it genuinely is one of those films that bears watching many, many times.
Absolutely, and that's interesting because when we're going to talk about the marketing, there was some concern by the way that the marketing was approached, and in fact, to your point, because you can watch the film more than once, it's so enjoyable, and there's so much to look at. But also, can I just point quickly? The music is very important. I mean, music is important in all movies, but if you're going to do a horror film, then this is a perfect companion with the visuals, kind of what you can see and hear, because the music can also translate a lot more by the emotion of the main characters, but also the impending doom. Another scene, which I don't think will give too much away because I think it's in the trailers, is when she's suspecting that she's essentially being hunted by an invisible man. She suspects who this could be, and therefore she rings the mobile phone number of that suspect and discovers that the mobile phone is in the attic in the house where she's staying. And I think the whole movie is around this idea of an intruder in your own house that you can't see, which is probably calling on some kind of primal fears for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. It just is. You can't help but look over your own shoulder in your own house after you've watched this film. So, Pascal, what about the marketing? What do you think about what they did with this?
Well, this is a movie that, like many movies released last year, fell foul of the pandemic and the restrictions. So, if I remind people that the movie was released at the end of February 2020 by Universal Pictures, one of the distributors. This was made in collaboration with the Blumhouse Pictures. Fan of horror film will know that Blumhouse has now become the standard when it comes to getting scared. And then within weeks and days, they had to cancel the theatrical release. And on one hand, what they could have done, Roger, is like others, is to go, well, never mind, we'll pause now and wait till the end of the pandemic to re-release the movie at the theaters. And what they've done instead is to go online. And they've also, because they had that pleasure in the US where they have much nicer weather than in Edinburgh and Durham, they've also gone for drive-in. So movie released in the end of February for a few weeks, then lockdown measures start and they go switch directly onto online and drive-in. A very, very interesting decision indeed.
Yeah, and again, there was plenty of trailers, plenty of clips released in advance, but I think that they actually got a few complaints this time, didn't they, by actually giving too much away. Now, certainly some of the trailers that we've discussed recently don't give anything away about the film, but maybe the trailers did give too much away, although the director seemed to think that actually, even though he did blow a few things in the trailer, there's plenty more to see in the actual film. And as I've said, I've seen it 3 times and I see something different every time, so I'm not that bothered about that angle.
It's fascinating, because so the movie went into production in July of 2019. November, that was pretty much finishing post-production. So November saw the release of the first official trailer in the Universal Pictures official YouTube channel. Then it gets copied and pasted, all over the web.
Yeah.
This was 2.5 minutes, which is rather long. And as you mentioned, Roger, pretty much told the whole story from start to finish. So you understand why and what is happening to the character Elisabeth Moss, and I'm trying to remember her name in the movie. I'm going to say Cecilia.
Cecilia.
Oh,
yeah,
right, yeah, Cecilia. And you see the conflict, you see some of the scenes we mentioned about. You also get a sense of resolution when she's fighting back. So many people complain online saying, well, what is the point to go and see the movie? But the whole point is, this is not the story you think it is. It's very, very, very clever. Then, of course, February 2020, the second and final trailer is released. A bit longer, different scenes, different angle, all in and around the character and the fact that she's recovering from a abusive relationship, and is shown almost as more as a thriller, whereby it's more her who is mad and people around her trying to support her than the invisible man, which I think is very, very clever. And at the same time, which I've seen done before with other films, they sent extract of the films exclusively to some channels on YouTube, which are all about movies. And they also did a IMAX only featurette saying the reason why you're going to enjoy this film on IMAX is all the following. And you've got to feel sorry for the film producers, because within moments, as we explained, they had to forego the theatrical release and go online instead.
Yeah, and again, there was a load of 15-second square videos that they put on the Facebook page, the official website. Actually had some games, didn't it? Wasn't there some sort of game to engage people to look out for references in the film to the original film? Now, I'm actually thinking, did I spot anything? Did you?
Only the main one I've already seen, which is when she's in hospital because her friends, bless them, think she's going crazy.
Yeah.
There is a man who has been wheeled out of a operation room covered in bandages, which I think was the nod. But they're meant to be others. But I think you have to be an Invisible Man nerd to spot that. But so I think, to your point though, Roger, what they did very, very cleverly is say, well, since we are now releasing this online and you have to pay or rent the film, let's crank up the social media game. So the Facebook page was pretty much launched at the same time as the trailer in November, and then very, very quickly went, we've got to engage the fans. So they, as we recommend, you're right, put the video in square format. There was bits from the film, there was comments from the critics, repurposed and so on and so forth. And the other thing that they did, which I thought was interesting, they also introduced some additional taglines. Each time they put a square video. You've not done this for a while, Roger, but you remember when we did the Die Hard review, you very kindly read, the taglines with that movie voice. So feel free to do so on this occasion. But there was some really, really fun tagline to supplement, obviously, the official one.
Yeah, I think the official one was, what you can't see can't hurt you. Oh, no, what you can't see can hurt you. Mm-hmm. I love that play on words. That's great. But there were so many others. He's hunting her. Nobody's listening. He's invisible. He's not dead. He's dead, isn't he? Behold a new kind of fear. Prepare for the ultimate night in. Uncover the mystery. He's coming for you. It's time for her to... I mean, it just goes on and on. I don't think I've ever seen as many taglines for a film before.
No, so once again, breaking perhaps rules here, but really creating a sense of... sometimes with social media, people can be forgiven to think that it's done mechanically, that the marketers or the film producers are not behind it fully. And I think with the presence of the additional tagline to accompany each of the little video clips, you get a sense of at least someone is thinking about it. At least someone is trying to entertain me. The one thing they did as well, which I thought was interesting, is so you had the game about, can you spot reference to the old movies, but also you could win a Invisible Man activity book, which I have to confess I'm quite intrigued to what that would entail. Blank pages maybe, perhaps not. And all you had to do was to comment and name the director of the very first movie from 1933, so also bringing a bit of nostalgia and inviting the movie fans to interact.
So I'll sort of go right back to the start again here, where I said what I did is that on the whole, I usually shudder when I hear that somebody is going to try and reboot or reimagine a classic film. Because they usually screw it up in some respects, and usually it doesn't add anything to what's gone before. But with this one, they really did change everything. It really was a different approach, a game changer, almost like a complete reinvention. And I really do think that if you haven't seen it, just get out there, get that DVD, put it into your machine, turn the lights down, and prepare to be scared.
Absolutely. For me, as you've said, Roger, everything has worked well for them. Oh, by the way, this will qualify as a low-budget movie in the world of Hollywood. I think they spent in the region of $7 million, which I know is a lot of money. But for filmmaking, it's on the low end of the scale. And what they got in return, not just in terms of the monetary value, but the support from the fans and the reaction from the critics, I think it is great. And back to this idea of making the decision to go ahead, despite the pandemic, with the online streaming and matching the marketing accordingly with, for once, actually an official website that did a good job, because you and I have been very critical in the past of official websites, and even being daring with doing things like Watch Party, using Twitter and Facebook with hosted by famous actors and comedians to say, go online, rent The Invisible Man now, and you can react and comment on Twitter as you get scared and as you're jumping through the different scenes.
And I think just to close this off, I'll refer back to my content spotlight. If you remember in my content spotlight, I said that one of the things that we're taught to do at school is not to copy. But of course, you and I know in business that if you see a good idea, copy it, but make it better. Now, sometimes people copy things and don't make it better or make it worse. Here's an example of somebody who said, let's take that incredible concept, copy the concept, but absolutely blow it out of the park. And that's exactly what they did with this. Wow, Pascal, yet another episode of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast in the can. It's an absolute pleasure, as always, to sit here and talk about marketing with you, talk about films with you. And I hope that everybody watching this and everybody listening to this has enjoyed it as well. Please do. Let us know what you think. Give us your feedback. Give us your comments. You can comment on the video on the YouTube channel. You can talk to us on LinkedIn. You can talk to us on Twitter. And let us know the sort of films that you'd like us to talk about, and give us your recommendations for any marketing tech and apps. So until next time, please go out there and make sure that your marketing is done right. I was Roger Edwards and he was Pascal Fintoni.